My daughter laughed in my face and told 40 neighbors I was too old for Hawaii. Right there at our July 4th barbecue, with everyone watching, she announced that 63-year-olds don't belong on adventures. The entire yard went silent. 40 pairs of eyes stared at me while I stood there holding potato salad, my face burning with shame so intense I felt dizzy. I'm Tristan Henderson. I taught middle school for 38 years before retiring. I raised 2 children who I thought understood respect and dignity, but apparently spending $8,200 of my own money on a family vacation made me a foolish old man who needed supervision. See, this wasn't just any vacation. This was Helen's dream, my wife who died 4 years ago, asking me to promise we'd see Hawaii together someday. Cancer stole that chance, but I finally had enough savings to keep my word, so I invited the whole family. My treat. Every penny from my teacher's pension. Big mistake. The humiliation started small. Carolyn suggesting I might get seasick on sunset cruises, Kevin worrying about my stamina for hiking, but standing in my own backyard, watching my daughter strip away decades of competence in front of people who'd respected me their entire lives. Something fundamental shifted inside me. My hands started trembling as I set down that potato salad. Not from age, from rage. That night, I made 3 phone calls that would teach my children the most expensive lesson of their lives. Where are you listening from right now? I'd love to know because this story gets wild, and I want to make sure you stick around to hear what happened when they arrived in Hawaii. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoy stories about family justice. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. Growing up poor in Ohio shaped everything about how I raised my kids. My father worked double shifts at the steel mill just to keep food on our table. I swore my children would never know that kind of struggle. For 38 years, I stood in front of middle school classrooms teaching grammar and literature. Every paycheck went straight to Carolyn and Kevin's needs first. Piano lessons for Carolyn. Baseball camp for Kevin. College funds that grew penny by penny while Helen and I drove the same beat-up Honda for 15 years. I never took a sick day I didn't absolutely need. Every summer vacation was spent painting houses or tutoring kids for extra money. Helen would joke that I worked harder during vacation than during the school year. She was right. We'd plan these elaborate family trips to Disney World or the Grand Canyon, spending every saved dollar on making memories for our kids. But Hawaii? That was always our dream. Helen and I would sit on the porch after dinner, sharing travel magazines, pointing at those crystal blue beaches. Someday, she'd whisper, tracing her finger along pictures of volcanic sunsets. When the kids are grown and we can finally spend money on ourselves. Until Helen got sick. Cancer has a way of stealing more than just time. It steals dreams, plans, futures you thought were guaranteed. Helen fought for 18 months with the kind of grace that made every nurse at the hospital love her. But chemotherapy costs what teachers don't make in a lifetime. Our Hawaii savings disappeared first. Then the college funds we'd rebuilt after the kids graduated. Then the emergency money we'd hidden in coffee cans around the house. Helen never complained, not once. She'd hold my hand during treatments and say, "We'll have our adventures in heaven, Tris. Don't you worry about earthly beaches." The night before she died, Helen's voice was barely a whisper. I leaned close to her hospital bed, holding her thin fingers. "Promise me something," she said. "Promise me you'll go to Hawaii someday. Not for me. For you. You've spent 40 years taking care of everyone else. It's time you lived a little." I promised. Of course I promised. You don't say no to a dying woman's final wish, especially when that woman sacrificed everything for family just like you did. 2 years passed before I could even think about keeping that promise. 2 years of rattling around our empty house, eating frozen dinners, watching game shows alone. I should have known better. Retirement was supposed to mean freedom. Instead, it meant loneliness echoing through every room Helen had decorated with such care. Her reading chair sat empty by the window. Her coffee mug still waited in the cabinet. Some mornings I'd catch myself making 2 cups of coffee out of habit. The pension wasn't bad for a teacher. Not great, but enough to live comfortably. Enough to finally book that Hawaii trip Helen and I had dreamed about for decades. But the thought of traveling alone terrified me. What's the point of seeing paradise if you can't share it with someone you love? That's when I decided to invite the kids. Carrie Lynn lived just 20 minutes away with her husband Scott and their 2 boys. Kevin and his wife Lisa had moved back to town last year with their little girl. We could make this a real family vacation. Helen would have loved seeing her grandchildren play on those beaches she'd dreamed about. I called Carolyn first, my voice full of excitement. "Honey, I want to take the whole family to Hawaii. My treat, 7 days in paradise, all expenses paid. What do you think?" The silence on the other end should have warned me. When Carolyn finally spoke, her voice was sharp, calculating. "Dad, that sounds expensive. How much are we talking about?" That should have been my first warning. $8,200. That's what it cost to book 5 adults and 3 children for a week in Hawaii. Flights, hotels, rental cars, meal allowances. Every penny I'd saved since Helen's funeral, plus the small inheritance from her life insurance. "Dad, that's a lot of money," Carolyn said when I told her the amount. "Are you sure you can afford this? I mean, at your age, shouldn't you be more careful with your finances?" "At my age?" She was already starting. "I've been planning this for 2 years," I told her. "It's something your mother always wanted. I thought you'd be excited to share this with me." Another pause. I could hear Scott talking in the background, his voice urgent. Finally, Carolyn said, "Well, if you're determined to spend that kind of money, I guess we could go. But Dad, I really think you should reconsider traveling at 63. Hawaii is a long flight. What if something happens to you? What if you have a medical emergency?" Kevin's response was even worse. When I called him, he immediately put me on speaker so Lisa could hear. "Dad, that's really generous," he said carefully. "But Lisa and I were just saying how maybe this kind of trip is too much for someone your age. Maybe we should look into something closer to home." The kids assumed they'd just inherit the trip. Booking everything online took me 3 careful days. I'd learned computers during my last year's teaching, when the school district finally dragged us into the digital age. Turns out those late-night grading sessions had prepared me for more than just lesson plans. I sat at Helen's old desk, her reading glasses perched on my nose, scrolling through hotel websites and airline booking systems. Everything went under my name, Tristan Henderson, my credit card, my frequent flyer account from the 2 conferences I'd attended over the years, my emergency contact information. The Maui Beach Resort confirmation email arrived at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. 5 rooms booked for 7 nights. The airline confirmations followed an hour later. 8 round-trip tickets, Chicago to Honolulu. Even the rental car reservation, a minivan large enough for our whole crew, sat in my name alone. Everything in my name. I learned that from 38 years handling school finances. Never assume someone else will honor verbal agreements. Always keep the paperwork in order. Always maintain control of the money trail. The kids started planning immediately. Carolyn called the next morning with restaurant suggestions she'd found online. Kevin texted me links to snorkeling tours and helicopter rides. Lisa started a group chat about what to pack. None of them asked if I was still planning to come. Cancellation up to 48 hours, full refund. The family dinner where they divided up their vacation was the night everything crystallized for me. Carolyn had printed out a detailed itinerary, color-coded by family and activity. Kevin brought his laptop to show me photos of excursions they'd researched. "So, Dad, we figured you probably want to relax by the pool while we do the more active stuff," Carolyn said, sliding her papers across my dining room table. "The snorkeling might be too much for you, and the hiking trail to that waterfall looks pretty challenging." Lisa nodded enthusiastically. "We thought you could babysit our daughter while the adults do the adventure tours. That way you're still contributing to the family vacation." I stared at their plans. Every single activity was labeled for adults only, or families with children. Not one item included Grandpa Triss. They'd turned my dream vacation into their convenience trip, with me serving as the built-in babysitter who happened to pay for everything. "What about the sunset dinner cruise?" I asked quietly. Helen always wanted to see a Hawaiian sunset from the water. Scott laughed. "Dad, those boats rock pretty good. At your age, seasickness could really ruin the trip for everyone." They never asked if he's still coming. I printed out every confirmation email, every receipt, every cancellation policy. Helen's old filing system had taught me to keep meticulous records, and 40 years of handling school budgets had made me obsessive about understanding the fine print. The hotel's cancellation policy was crystal clear. Reservations may be canceled up to 48 hours prior to arrival for full refund of all charges. The airline offered similar terms for their flexible booking option I'd purchased for an extra fee, Even the rental car company allowed cancellations with 24-hour notice. I spread the paperwork across Helen's desk like evidence in a criminal case. Every document bore the same name, Tristan Henderson. My signature, my credit card number, my responsibility. The kids had spent 3 weeks planning their itinerary, creating packing lists, researching restaurants and tours. Carolyn had even bought new swimsuits for the boys. Kevin purchased an underwater camera to document their family adventure. But legally, contractually, financially, none of them owned any piece of this trip. They were passengers on my vacation, not co-owners of some family inheritance. Reading fine print never felt so empowering. I printed out every confirmation email. Dad, we need to talk about money for the trip. Carolyn's call came on a Thursday morning while I was watering Helen's roses. She'd been thinking, she said. $8,000 covered the basics, but what about spending money? Shopping, extra meals, activities not included in our package? I'm thinking another $2,000 should cover incidentals for everyone, she continued. Maybe $2,500 to be safe. You know how expensive everything is in Hawaii. I stood in my garden hose dripping onto my shoes, listening to my daughter calculate how to spend more of my money. Money I'd saved by eating generic cereal and clipping coupons. Money that represented every careful financial decision I'd made since Helen's funeral. Carolyn, $8,000 is already more than I've ever spent on anything except this house. Dad, you can't take us to Hawaii and then expect us to sit in the hotel room because we can't afford to do anything fun. That's just cruel. Cruel. Taking your family to paradise was cruel if you didn't also fund their shopping sprees. The conversation got worse. They'd already researched restaurants, spa treatments, souvenir shopping. Scott wanted to try deep-sea fishing. Lisa had found a luau that cost $150 per person. The kids needed money for arcade games at the resort. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by someone you love? What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments. The worst part, I said yes. Lisa dropped their 3-year-old daughter at my house the next Monday morning. No warning call, no asking if I was available. Just a knock on the door at 7 a.m. with Emma in tow, carrying a suitcase that suggested a long stay. Hi, Dad, Lisa chirped, pushing past me into my living room. We thought Emma could stay with Grandpa while Kevin and I handle some pre-trip shopping and planning. You know, boring adult stuff. Plus, this gives you practice for all the grandpa duties you'll have in Hawaii. Emma was a sweet kid, but she was 3. 3-year-olds don't understand that Grandpa's house isn't a daycare center. They don't comprehend that retired people might have their own schedules, their own plans, their own lives. How long are we talking about? I asked, watching Emma immediately head for Helen's ceramic bird collection. Just a few days, maybe a week. We have so much to organize before Hawaii, and Emma gets bored shopping for adult vacation clothes. A week. They expected me to provide free childcare for a week while they prepared for the vacation I was paying for. The vacation they'd already decided I was too old to properly enjoy. That afternoon, Kevin called with his own request. Since I wasn't working anymore, could I handle some errands for their family? Picking up dry cleaning, grocery shopping, maybe cleaning their house while they were busy planning our trip? But the third demand broke something inside me. Dad, Lisa and I have been talking. Kevin's voice carried that careful tone children use when they're about to suggest something they know will hurt. We think maybe it's time you considered a smaller living situation. You know, something more manageable for a man your age. I was sitting in my recliner, Emma finally napping on Helen's old sofa, when Kevin delivered this latest plan for my life. He'd researched assisted living facilities in town. Nothing fancy, he assured me. Just safer. More practical. The timing works out perfectly, he continued. While we're all in Hawaii, you could tour these places. Maybe even move in somewhere new. Think how much easier your life would be without yard work and house maintenance. The house Helen and I had bought in 1987. The house where we'd raised our children, hosted countless family dinners, celebrated every birthday and holiday. The house where Helen had planted rose bushes and painted the kitchen yellow because it made morning coffee feel more cheerful. They wanted to warehouse me in assisted living while they vacationed in paradise with my money. Kevin, I'm 63, not 93. I don't need assisted living. Dad, be realistic. You're getting older. Living alone in that big house isn't practical anymore. And honestly, the money you'd save could help fund more family trips like this Hawaii thing. More family trips. More opportunities for them to exclude me while spending my savings. That's when I knew the barbecue wouldn't end well. July 4th arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, gentle breeze. The kind of day that made backyard barbecues feel like Norman Rockwell paintings. I'd been preparing for 3 days. Grocery shopping, cleaning the deck, setting up tables and chairs in Helen's garden. 42 people showed up. Neighbors from both sides of the street. Former teaching colleagues. The mailman who delivered to our route for 15 years. Kids from the neighborhood who'd grown up calling me Mr. Henderson. The kind of community gathering that made small-town America feel real and warm. I grilled burgers and hot dogs on the same Weber kettle I'd bought in 1995. Potato salad made from Helen's recipe. Corn on the cob from the farmer's market. Red, white, and blue, everything. Because that's what July 4th demanded. Carolyn and Scott arrived fashionably late, their boys immediately running to join the neighborhood kids. Kevin and Lisa came next. Emma finally returned to her parents after her week-long stay at Grandpa's house. Everyone mingled easily, old friends and neighbors sharing stories, catching up on summer plans. I felt proud hosting this gathering. Proud of the community connections I'd built over decades of living in the same place, teaching local children, being a reliable neighbor. These were my people, my chosen family beyond blood relations. Mr. Wilson approached me while I was flipping burgers, his weathered face bright with curiosity. I never saw the public humiliation coming. "Tris, I hear you're heading to Hawaii soon." Mr. Wilson's voice carried across the deck, loud enough to catch attention from nearby conversations. "Bet you're excited about that trip." Wilson had taught history at the middle school before retiring 5 years ahead of me. We'd shared hallway duty, lunch supervision, and countless conversations about difficult students. He was genuinely excited for my adventure, probably remembering his own retirement travels with fondness. "Oh yes," I started to say, spatula in hand, ready to share my excitement about finally fulfilling Helen's dream. "We leave next month. I can hardly wait to see those beaches Helen always—" "Actually, Dad's staying home." Carolyn's voice cut through the summer air like a blade. Conversations around us slowed, then stopped. I turned to see my daughter approaching with that bright, social smile she wore to charity events and PTA meetings, the smile that never reached her eyes. "Dad's staying home," she repeated louder, making sure everyone nearby could hear. "We're going instead. Someone needs to be realistic about age-appropriate activities." The spatula grew heavy in my hand. Around us, neighbors stopped mid-conversation, sensing tension they couldn't quite identify. Mr. Wilson's friendly expression shifted to confusion, then concern. "I don't understand," Wilson said carefully. "Tris, aren't you going to Hawaii?" Carolyn laughed. That cold, cruel sound I'd heard too many times over the past month. "Oh, Mr. Wilson, you should see some of the things Dad wanted to do. Snorkeling at 63. Hiking to waterfalls. It's sweet, really, but someone needs to inject some reality here." Then Wilson asked the innocent question. "But Tris, it's your vacation, isn't it? Your money, your trip?" Mr. Wilson's question hung in the humid July air, simple words that demanded simple answers. Around us, 40 neighbors had gradually stopped their conversations. Corn on the cob cooled on paper plates. Beer bottles sat forgotten on picnic tables. I felt my face growing warm, not from the grill heat, but from something deeper. Embarrassment. Shame. The awful recognition that my own child was about to humiliate me in front of people who'd respected me for decades. "Well, technically yes," Carolyn said, her voice taking on that patient tone teachers use with slow students. "Dad is paying for everything. But honestly, at 63, he needs to accept his limitations. Hawaii isn't exactly a senior-friendly destination." Scott nodded supportive agreement. Kevin avoided eye contact entirely, suddenly fascinated by his shoes. Lisa busied herself with their daughter's juice box. 63 isn't that old," Wilson said, his voice gaining an edge. "Hell, I'm 68 and just got back from Colorado hiking. What's wrong with a man wanting to see Hawaii?" The wrong question to ask Carolyn when she had an audience. "Mr. Wilson, with all due respect, some people age more gracefully than others. Dad's been struggling since Mom died. Living alone, getting confused about practical matters. Honestly, we're worried about him traveling alone, getting lost, having medical episodes far from home. My hands started trembling. The spatula rattled against the grill grate. She was painting me as some doddering old fool in front of my entire community, making me sound incompetent, senile, helpless. Carolyn's laugh cut through the summer air. "He's 63, not 23. Carolyn's voice carried across the entire backyard now, reaching every corner of our gathering. Old people don't belong on adventure vacations. Someone needs to accept reality here. The words hit me like physical blows. Old people, adventure vacations, reality. Each phrase designed to strip away decades of competence, independence, and dignity. 40 pairs of eyes focused on me. Neighbors I'd taught, friends I'd helped through difficult times, community members who'd watched me handle everything from school board meetings to neighborhood disputes with wisdom and grace. Now they were watching my own daughter reduce me to a stereotype, a burden, an embarrassment. My face burned with shame so intense I felt dizzy. The spatula slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the deck. Around me, conversations had died completely. Even the children seemed to sense something terrible happening, their laughter fading to uncomfortable silence. "Dad just doesn't understand that Hawaii is for people who can actually enjoy it," Carolyn continued, warming to her theme. "We'll make better use of the money. We can actually swim, hike, explore. Dad would just slow everyone down, probably get sick from the flight, maybe have some kind of health crisis that ruins everyone's vacation." Health crisis? At 63, as if I were already 1 foot in the grave. Mr. Wilson's face had hardened into cold disapproval, but he stayed silent. What could he say? Family dynamics weren't his business, even when they played out at public barbecues. Lisa actually nodded approval. "It's really for the best. Tris can watch Emma while we adults enjoy the activities." 40 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. The silence stretched like taffy in summer heat. Neighbors studied their plates. Former colleagues found sudden interest in their drinks. Children sensed adult tension and moved closer to their parents. I stood frozen beside my grill, spatula on the ground, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. These were people who'd respected me for decades, parents whose children I'd taught with patience and skill, community members who'd elected me to the school board 3 times running. Now they were watching me get treated like an incompetent burden by my own family. Mrs. Patterson from next door looked genuinely distressed. She'd been borrowing cups of sugar from Helen and me for 20 years. Had I really transformed overnight from capable neighbor to doddering old fool? The whispers started slowly, subtle head movements, glances exchanged between couples. Not cruel gossip, but the uncomfortable shifting of people witnessing something they wished they hadn't seen. "Well, Mr. Wilson finally said, his voice carefully neutral, "I suppose every family handles these things differently." These things. As if my desire to see Hawaii was some kind of mental health episode requiring family intervention. I wanted to defend myself. Wanted to explain that I'd been teaching teenagers right up until retirement. That I balanced my own checkbook, maintained my own house, lived independently with complete competence. That 63 wasn't 93. But what words could restore dignity once it's been publicly stripped away? Instead, I bent down to pick up the dropped spatula. My hands shook as I turned back to the grill, mechanically flipping burgers that suddenly seemed pointless. That night, something died inside me. Cleaning up after everyone left felt like preparing for a funeral. Paper plates scattered across tables like evidence of celebration that had turned sour. Half-eaten potato salad congealing in serving bowls. Empty beer bottles reflecting the last rays of July sunlight. I moved through the cleanup mechanically, my hands still trembling slightly from the afternoon's humiliation. 42 people had witnessed my daughter reduce me to a caricature. 42 people now saw me as the pathetic old man who couldn't handle a simple vacation. The silence felt oppressive after hours of conversation and laughter. Helen's garden, where we'd hosted so many happy gatherings, seemed to echo with the memory of Carolyn's cutting words. Even the roses looked wilted in the evening heat. I loaded the dishwasher with the same careful precision I'd used grading papers for 38 years. Routine physical tasks had always helped me think through difficult problems. Tonight, though, thinking hurt too much. When the last dish was clean and the deck swept clear of debris, I sat at Helen's kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't really want. Her photo watched me from across the room, the same wedding picture that had sat there for 4 years. Helen's photo watched me from the kitchen table. Helen's smile had always been my anchor during difficult times. 26 years old in that wedding photo, wearing the simple dress we'd bought at JCPenney because we couldn't afford anything fancier. Her eyes held the same gentle wisdom that had guided our family through every crisis. I picked up the silver frame, running my thumb across the glass that had somehow accumulated dust despite my regular cleaning. 4 years since cancer took her, and I still found myself talking to this photograph when life became too complicated for solo decisions. "They think I'm too old, Helen," I whispered to her image. "Our own children think 63 means incompetent." Her voice came back to me as clearly as if she were sitting across the table. Not supernatural communication, just the memory of advice she'd given countless times during our marriage. "Tristan Henderson, don't you dare let people walk over you. Even family, especially family. You taught respect to other people's children for 4 decades. Time you demanded it from your own." Helen had never been one for gentle suggestions when directness was required. She'd stood up to school board members, difficult parents, and anyone else who tried to diminish the people she loved. She always was smarter than me. The computer hummed to life with the familiar Windows chime that had become my evening companion since retirement. Helen's old desk chair creaked as I settled in, her reading glasses sliding down my nose exactly as they had slid down hers during countless late-night grading sessions. The blue glow of the monitor felt cold and businesslike after the warm chaos of the afternoon's barbecue. But coldness was exactly what this situation required. Emotional decisions had gotten me into this mess. Clear thinking would get me out. I opened my email first, scrolling through confirmation numbers I'd memorized weeks ago. Maui Beach Resort, American Airlines, budget rental cars. Every reservation sat in neat electronic folders organized with the same obsessive care I'd applied to lesson plans and grade books. The hotel's website loaded slowly on my dial-up connection. Customer service phone numbers appeared in small print at the bottom of every page. Airlines offered similar contact information, though their automated systems would probably keep me waiting until morning. But cancellation policies were clear. 48 hours for hotels, 24 hours for rental cars. Airline tickets purchased with flexible change options allowed modifications until departure day. 3 phone calls would change everything. The hotel answered on the second ring, probably hoping to catch West Coast customers before bedtime. A pleasant young woman with a slight accent confirmed my reservation details with professional efficiency. "I need to cancel 5 rooms for the Henderson party," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "Arriving August 15th, departing August 22nd. May I ask the reason for cancellation, Mr. Henderson?" "Family emergency." Not technically a lie. Carolyn's public humiliation certainly constituted an emergency in family relationships. "I'm sorry to hear that, sir. I show 5 Ocean View rooms, total charges of $4,800. You'll receive full refund within 7 to 10 business days." The airline took longer, their hold music a jazz melody that reminded me of songs Helen hummed while cooking. 23 minutes on hold, but eventually a tired-sounding agent accessed my reservation. 8 tickets, Chicago O'Hare to Honolulu International. Total refund of $3,100, sir. Sorry to hear about your change in plans. Budget rental cars required only 5 minutes. Their automated system handled cancellations smoothly, confirming my refund amount via email before I'd even hung up. But I wasn't done yet. Paris had always been Helen's first choice. Before we'd settled on Hawaii as our dream destination, she'd spent hours studying travel books about French cafes and museum collections. The Louvre, she'd said, contained more beauty than any beach could offer. "Maybe when we're really old," she'd joke, "we can sit in sidewalk cafes and pretend we're sophisticated Europeans." Really old. At 63, I was apparently already there according to my children. The Air France website offered surprising deals for solo travelers. Mid-August departures, when families with children were rushing to squeeze in last-minute vacations before school started. A single traveler could find excellent prices during this chaotic time. I scrolled through hotel options in the 7th arrondissement, an area Helen had marked in her guidebooks. Small boutique places with names like Hotel des Grandes Écoles and Hotel Malta Opera. Nothing fancy, but authentic. Parisian. The kind of places where a retired American teacher could blend in quietly, observing life from cafe tables. The booking process felt different this time, liberating. Every click represented a choice made entirely for myself. No family input, no group discussions, no compromise, single room with Sen view, September departure to allow for planning, one traveler, one passport, one adventure designed without committee approval. Paris had always been Helen's first choice. The Hotel Saint-Germain's website showed exactly what Helen would have chosen. Small, intimate, walking distance to the Latin Quarter where she'd dreamed of browsing bookstalls along the river. A room with tall windows overlooking narrow cobblestone streets. I clicked book now with the same decisive action I'd used teaching students to commit to clear thesis statements. No hesitation, no second guessing. 1 week in Paris, scheduled to begin 3 days after my family's planned Hawaii departure. While they were discovering their canceled reservations, I'd be boarding an Air France flight to Charles de Gaulle. Perfect timing, perfect justice. The confirmation email arrived within minutes. Mr. Tristan Henderson, single occupancy, one-way ticket, because why limit options? At my age, perhaps extended European travel made more sense than rushed week-long trips designed to accommodate everyone else's schedules. The credit card charge appeared immediately on my online banking statement. $3,400, representing Helen's refunded dream and my own newfound independence. Money well spent on proving that 63 meant beginning, not ending. I printed the confirmations with the same care I'd applied to important school documents. Legal proof that Tristan Henderson was perfectly capable of planning international travel without family supervision or committee approval. The children wouldn't know until Hawaii. Changing the locks required one phone call to Rodriguez Brothers Locksmiths, a company that had rekeyed our house when we'd first moved in 36 years ago. Miguel Rodriguez Jr. remembered me from parent-teacher conferences and offered next-day service as a professional courtesy. Just standard security upgrade, Mr. Henderson? That's right. Time to update everything. The legal documents took more time. My lawyer, Janet Morrison, had handled Helen's estate and our simple wills with straightforward competence. She didn't ask many questions when I requested updates to beneficiary information and power of attorney designations. "You're removing Carolyn and Kevin as primary beneficiaries?" she asked during our phone consultation. "Temporarily, until they demonstrate better judgment regarding family relationships." Janet's pause suggested professional curiosity, but family law attorneys heard stranger stories every week. "I can draft new documents by Friday. You'll need 2 witnesses for signatures." My cell phone settings required only minutes to update. Carolyn's number moved to blocked calls. Kevin joined the same list. Their spouses followed automatically. If they wanted to communicate, they could send letters to my home address like civilized people. Physical boundaries matched emotional ones. New locks prevented uninvited visits. Legal changes protected my assets from entitled assumptions. Technological barriers controlled when and how communication occurred. They'd learn respect the hard way. Packing for Paris felt different than every other trip I'd planned. No family needs to consider. No compromise between adult preferences and children's requirements. No oversized suitcases filled with just-in-case items that never got used. One medium suitcase held everything necessary for extended European travel. Comfortable walking shoes broken in during evening strolls around my neighborhood. Lightweight clothing suitable for September weather. Helen's old camera, carefully wrapped in soft sweaters. The guidebook she'd collected over the years filled a small carry-on bag. Pages marked with her handwriting, restaurant recommendations circled in blue ink, museum hours highlighted in yellow. Her research would finally serve its intended purpose, just 25 years later than originally planned. I left detailed instructions for my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, regarding mail collection and yard maintenance. Emergency contact information led to Janet Morrison's law office, not family members who considered me incompetent. The house felt peaceful as I completed final preparations. Helen's roses needed watering before departure. Bills required early payment to cover extended absence. Refrigerator contents went to neighbors who'd appreciate fresh food rather than waste. Everything organized with the same methodical care I'd applied to lesson planning for 4 decades. Nothing left to chance. Nothing dependent on other people's cooperation or approval. Departure day arrived faster than expected. The taxi arrived at exactly 4:30 a.m., early enough to avoid neighborhood attention. I'd chosen this timing deliberately, wanting to begin my adventure without curious questions or awkward explanations to well-meaning neighbors. My single suitcase fit easily in the trunk. The driver, a cheerful Bangladeshi man named Ahmed, made polite conversation about international travel while navigating empty suburban streets toward O'Hare International Airport. First time to Paris, sir? Yes, something I've been planning for years. Beautiful city. You'll love the museums, the cafes, perfect for thoughtful travelers. Thoughtful travelers. I like that description better than Carolyn's characterization of age-inappropriate adventure seekers. The interstate was nearly empty at this hour, allowing smooth progress through industrial neighborhoods toward the airport's distinctive control tower. Dawn painted the eastern horizon pink and gold, promising clear skies for international departure. My phone had been buzzing intermittently since yesterday evening. 7 missed calls from Carolyn, 12 from Kevin. Text messages I hadn't bothered reading. They'd probably discovered their cancellation confirmations by now, finally understanding that their father retained legal control over his own money and decisions. My phone started buzzing in the taxi. Airport mode seemed appropriate for this departure. No communication with people who'd publicly humiliated me. No explanations owed to children who'd treated their father like an incompetent burden. The taxi dropped me at Terminal 5, Air France departures. International travel felt surprisingly familiar despite years of domestic trips. Passport control, security screening, gate assignments. All routine procedures that required basic competence, not youthful athleticism. My boarding pass confirmed premium economy seating, a small luxury Helen and I had never afforded during our budget-conscious years. Another advantage of planning trips for 1 instead of 8. Every dollar could focus on personal comfort rather than spreading thin across multiple family members. The gate area buzzed with typical pre-flight activity. Business travelers typing on laptops, young backpackers studying guidebooks, families negotiating luggage and restless children. I fit comfortably among solo travelers who moved through airports with quiet independence. Flight 328 to Charles de Gaulle would depart in 2 hours. Plenty of time to enjoy airport coffee and watch morning news without family commentary or criticism. Plenty of time to savor the beginning of an adventure chosen entirely for myself. Takeoff felt like rebirth. 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, I finally understood what Helen had meant about European sophistication. The Air France cabin crew moved with quiet efficiency, serving real meals on actual plates rather than plastic packages. Wine accompanied lunch without additional charge. Even coach passengers received treatment that acknowledged adult dignity. The passenger beside me, a French businessman returning from Chicago meetings, made polite conversation about travel destinations. His English carried the careful precision of educated multilingual speakers. First visit to Paris? Yes. My wife always wanted to see the Louvre, the Latin Quarter. I'm finally making the trip. You honor her memory with this journey. Paris welcomes thoughtful visitors who appreciate art and history. Honor her memory. Yes, exactly. Helen would have loved this flight, this conversation, this sense of cultured exploration beyond American shores. She would have studied the French phrase book I'd packed, attempted ordering coffee in careful pronunciation. Through the small oval window, clouds stretched endlessly below us, white cotton fields hiding the ocean's surface. Somewhere behind us, my children were probably discovering their Hawaii cancellations. Somewhere ahead, Paris waited with cafes and museums Helen had dreamed about. Meanwhile, in Hawaii, Carolyn had packed for Hawaii with the careful attention she applied to major social events. 3 suitcases filled with resort wear, designer sunglasses, camera equipment for documenting their tropical adventure. Scott carried additional bags containing snorkeling gear and beach toys for their boys. Kevin and Lisa arrived at O'Hare with similar optimism, their luggage stuffed with vacation essentials they'd researched and purchased over weeks of excited planning. Emma toddled between her parents, clutching a new travel toy intended to keep her occupied during the long flight. Both families had risen early, navigated airport traffic, checked their oversized baggage with minor complaints about fees. Hawaiian Airlines ground staff processed their tickets efficiently, directing them to the appropriate gate for their afternoon departure. The flight boarded smoothly. Premium economy seats provided adequate comfort for the 9-hour journey ahead. Meal service began shortly after takeoff, with tropical drinks that put everyone in vacation mood despite travel fatigue. They talked excitedly about snorkeling plans, restaurant reservations, sunset photography opportunities. The boys played handheld video games, while adults reviewed guidebooks and confirmed their detailed itinerary. Everything proceeded exactly as they'd planned for weeks. The Honolulu airport was not what they expected. Hawaiian air hits newcomers like a warm, humid embrace. Plumeria and ocean salt mixed with jet fuel and tourist excitement. Kareelan's family emerged from their 9-hour flight, tired but energetic, ready to claim baggage and begin their tropical adventure. The Maui Beach Resort shuttle was supposed to meet them at baggage claim. According to their detailed itinerary, ground transportation had been arranged and prepaid, eliminating the stress of navigating unfamiliar territory with tired children and multiple suitcases. No shuttle appeared. After 30 minutes of waiting, Carolan approached the transportation desk, where a cheerful young man in a Hawaiian shirt consulted his computer system with growing confusion. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't show any reservation under Henderson. Are you sure about the hotel name?" "Of course I'm sure. Maui Beach Resort. 5 rooms, 7 nights. My father booked everything weeks ago. More typing, more screen examination, a phone call to the resort that stretched uncomfortably long. Carolan's vacation mood began shifting toward irritation as Kevin and Lisa watched with their own luggage piled around crying children. "Ma'am, the resort shows that reservation was canceled yesterday. Full cancellation, no guests expected." The words didn't register immediately. Canceled? That was impossible. They'd confirmed everything twice, printed boarding passes, packed carefully planned vacation wardrobes. Carolan's credit card was declined. The hotel registration desk at Maui Beach Resort confirmed their worst fears. No Henderson reservation, no rooms available for walk-in guests during peak summer season, no record of any booking that had existed before cancellation. "But this is impossible!" Carolan's voice carried across the elegant lobby, drawing uncomfortable attention from other guests. "My father booked these rooms months ago. We have confirmation numbers." The front desk manager, a patient woman who'd clearly handled similar situations before, offered professional sympathy while explaining reality. Cancellations processed 48 hours before arrival received full refunds. The system showed proper cancellation procedures had been followed. Kevin tried calling his father while Lisa managed their increasingly cranky daughter. Ring after ring went to voicemail. Tristan Henderson's phone was apparently turned off or set to refuse their calls. Scott's attempts to book alternative accommodations revealed the harsh truth about Hawaiian vacation pricing during peak season. Available rooms cost 3 times their normal budget. Their credit cards, maxed out from vacation preparations, couldn't handle unexpected hotel expenses. Airport payphones became their lifeline for increasingly desperate attempts to reach Tristan. Still no answer. Just the same calm voicemail message they'd heard for decades. "You've reached Tristan Henderson. Please leave a message and I'll return your call promptly." Except he wouldn't, and they were learning that lesson in the most expensive way possible. Then the postcards started arriving. The concierge at Maui Beach Resort handed them 3 postcards addressed to the Henderson family in care of the hotel. The timing seemed impossible. How could mail reach them when they'd only arrived hours ago? The first postcard showed the Eiffel Tower gleaming against a twilight sky. Tristan's careful teacher handwriting covered the back in precise block letters. "Learning to enjoy adventures at 63. Some people appreciate culture over beaches. Having coffee at sidewalk cafes your mother always dreamed about. Paris is everything she said it would be. Hope your vacation planning went smoothly. Dad." Carolyn stared at the postcard with growing comprehension and rage. While they'd been flying to Hawaii expecting prepaid luxury, their father had been boarding a flight to Europe using their canceled vacation money. The second card arrived the next morning via hotel overnight delivery. The Louvre's glass pyramid reflected afternoon sunlight. The message was shorter. "Visited 3 museums yesterday. Amazing what you can accomplish when you don't need to accommodate family schedules. French cafes welcome solo diners with genuine warmth. Thank you for teaching me that 63 isn't too old for adventure. Th." Kevin crumpled the card in his fist. Lisa began crying. Scott calculated their mounting credit card debt from unexpected hotel costs, meal expenses, and emergency flight changes. Their vacation was becoming a financial disaster while their incompetent father toured European capitals. More postcards would follow. The third postcard hurt the most. Notre Dame Cathedral stood majestically against blue summer sky, its Gothic spires reaching toward heaven like prayers made visible. Tristan's message occupied every inch of available space. Your mother loved Gothic architecture, spent the afternoon reading her guidebooks in Shakespeare and Company bookstore. Amazing how much energy you have when people treat you with respect instead of condescension. Thinking about extending my stay indefinitely. Paris appreciates visitors of all ages. Give my regards to whatever Hawaiian beaches you're enjoying. TH. Extending his stay indefinitely. Their father wasn't just taking a vacation, he was rebuilding his entire life without them. Word traveled quickly through their small hometown community. Mrs. Patterson from next door called Carolyn's neighbor, who called Carolyn's friend, who posted carefully worded social media updates about family travel complications. The story spread through networks of teachers, neighbors, and parents who'd known the Henderson family for decades. Public opinion divided along predictable lines. Older community members remembered Tristan's decades of dedicated teaching and respectful community involvement. They'd witnessed Carolyn's July 4th humiliation firsthand, recognized public disrespect when they saw it. Younger parents, especially those with their own aging family complications, showed more sympathy for Carolyn and Kevin's position. Managing elderly parents was genuinely difficult, they argued. Sometimes adult children needed to make hard decisions about age-appropriate activities. But the postcards kept arriving, each one documenting Tristan's sophisticated European adventure with photographic evidence that 63 was definitely not too old for cultural exploration. The final postcard was the harshest. The Musée d'Orsay postcard showed Renoir's Dance at the Moulin de la Galette, couples spinning in dappled sunlight that reminded me of Helen's favorite painting. The message was brief, but devastating. Some lessons cost $8,200. Respect costs nothing. Your mother would be ashamed of how you treated your father. I've decided to stay in Paris permanently. Arrangements are being made to sell the house. You'll receive final communication through my attorney. Do not attempt to contact me directly. Perhaps someday you'll understand that dignity matters more than family convenience. Tristan Henderson. Permanently. House sale. Attorney communication only. Carolyn read the postcard 3 times before the words fully registered. Their father hadn't just canceled their vacation. He'd canceled their relationship entirely. The mortgage on his house had been paid off years ago. Property values in their neighborhood had increased substantially since the 1980s. Sale proceeds would fund extended European residence quite comfortably for a man with simple tastes and no family obligations. But that wasn't the end. My Parisian apartment overlooks a quiet street in the Marais district, where morning light filters through tall windows exactly as Helen imagined during her years of travel dreaming. The cafe downstairs serves coffee and croissants to a regular clientele who've learned to nod politely to the American teacher who spends hours reading guidebooks at corner tables. September in Paris offers perfect walking weather for visiting museums, bookstores, and markets Helen had circled in her research. Her camera captures images she would have loved: street performers near the Pantheon, flower vendors along the Seine, elderly French couples sharing afternoon wine at sidewalk bistros. The loneliness I'd feared never materialized. Solo travel provides freedom to follow personal interests without compromise or committee approval. Days unfold at natural rhythms rather than family schedules demanding constant negotiation. Mrs. Morrison's emails arrive weekly with house sale updates. Market conditions remain favorable for sellers. Proceeds will support comfortable Parisian residents for many years to come. Helen's photograph sits on my new nightstand beside letters from former teaching colleagues who understand educational retirement better than family members ever did. Their notes express admiration for my European adventure, encouragement for independent living, respect for choices made without family committee approval. The last letter from Carolyn, forwarded through my attorney's office, contained apologies, explanations, and desperate requests for reconciliation. Too little, too late. Some lessons about respect and dignity can't be unlearned once they've been taught publicly. My morning routine begins with cafe coffee and international news, continues through museum visits or neighborhood walks, ends with evening reading in Helen's old chair shipped from our former home. Peace settled into my bones like medicine after years of carrying other people's expectations. Age is liberation, not limitation. The The photograph I sent to Carolyn shows my new front door keys lying next to a note written in careful teacher handwriting. Some students require permanent expulsion.